Bryn, as a person who has played a considerable amount of rugby under Razor and seen how he works, how do you think this is, I suppose, affecting him?
I think the toughest thing that'll be for Ray is that, and it really is a reality because he lost his job around it, was around, the players that didn't trust him. And knowing Ray and the coaching that I was able to have, not only just with him, but, Scott Hansen was talked in around that as well. And the coaching group as a whole has to be held accountable to what Razor was as a coach, is that he just didn't have the trust of the players. If you look at probably during Ian Foster's reign, when in a very similar position after 2 years, that playing group after the Test match in South Africa said that we still want you as our coach, and they backed him. And that's the leadership group really are able to make those decisions to whoever it may be, Mark Robertson at the time, to be able to say, no, we know he needs a little bit of work. We need to get things in place to be able to make Fozzie succeed, and they were able to do that. But the players wanted to play for him. In Razor's example, you think from a review process, you get the opportunity to then be able to try and rectify the bad things that have happened, or the things that weren't going right. But he didn't get that opportunity because, influential people and, not just the leadership players, but they have a big voice, but, the players as well, and whether it be management as well, didn't have that trust. So I think to answer your question, Ross, he'll be hurting, I think, because that's more so what's come out of it, the trust and not being able to have the trust of the group, which I don't struggle with. I wasn't privy to obviously what that is, and that might be a great learning for Razor in the long run. I never had that experience myself, but for that group and for the better of the All Blacks, they came to a decision that Razor had to step away.
When you look at Scott Robertson, I suppose the thing that struck me was the changes that I saw in his personality and his body language. The pressure was really, really difficult, and he struggled with it after all of that success. And I think from my point of view, you couldn't not pick him as the All Blacks coach. I mean, you can look back in hindsight and say, oh, well, he'd never lost before, but you couldn't not pick him at that point because he had been so damn successful. It's unfortunate it didn't work out, but you saw the pressure one year to the next and the way he spoke and those kind of things change. It's a tough job like that.
Oh, it's brutal. It is, everyone has an opinion on your job when you're the All Blacks coach. And, I think the key thing is he's not a bad coach. Clearly there's just, I suppose, some personality clashes. He has won everything. And I was all for him being selected. Everyone was. I know there's people coming out now saying that, I said it back then, but not many people did. How could you? He literally won everything he touched. So it's harsh, but international rugby is just so demanding, and clearly with the greatest rivalry and World Cup, they didn't feel like that coaching group was going to get them to first, to be winning a World Cup. That's what it's probably come down to. And it's what do you do? If you don't believe that, then, sit it out for another 18 months, or you make a hard decision, and it is hard, man. I feel for the guy. It's not easy when something like that is so public. And as Bryn said, he's actually a good dude. And I don't think it's personal. It's just that it just wasn't going in the direction everyone expected. And I'd say he felt that himself. As you say, the body language and the way he changed. So I think it's a bold call. It's extremely strong leadership, I think, from David Kirk and Kevin Mialamu, who obviously oversaw the review to come to that decision, because it was a lot easier to not have to do that. For Razor, I think he'll get a gig. He's got a very impressive CV, and no doubt, you never know. It's stranger things have happened. He may come back around and get another crack.
So when you look at these options, and everyone's talking about Rennie and they're talking about Joseph, which one do you think is the way to go?
Well, look, I think, Jamie Joseph's probably the front runner, right? I think, considering that he came back from Japan. We've got Dave Rennie over here at Kobe. He's obviously did his international experience with the Wallabies. And, from all accounts, talking to a lot of Australian guys, even Bernard Foley that was there at the time when Dave Rennie was coaching, really loved what he did and what he was able to do there. So, you'd have to think those are the two front runners. I think the more important question is who will be the assistants, because you have to think that Joe Smith's not in it. Vern Cotter's obviously going to the Reds. Warren Gatlin probably isn't going to be available. So the assistant coach is going to be really important. And from the criteria, if you're probably looking for that they want, you've got to have international experience. So if you look at probably like Jamie Joseph and for Dave Rennie, who fits that criteria? You've got Andrew Goodman, who's at Ireland in the British Irish Lions. He's one guy. Does he want to come back for 18 months when he's got a pretty good gig with Ireland? I'm not too sure. Got Kendrick Lynn, who's with Argentina, spent a little bit of time at the Highlanders, so that connection with Jamie Joseph. David Kidwell, who's at the Highlanders right now, so he's got international experience. So I think more the question I pose it to maybe you, Jip, as well, and Ross, whoever does get the job, who has who's the assistants going to be? Do they keep some of the crop of Jason Ryan? I think he's probably one guy that I think can get the players really back, and he's got a really good coaching pedigree. But other than that, who do you fit in?
Okay, you go a total new coaching group, and there's 18 months basically to the World Cup. They don't win, what happens? Are we going for another round? Is there the option of putting the band back together? Going back to Shag, Fozzie, Chrono's not with Aussie anymore. I don't know if it's possible, but for me it's like, one, they're going to hold the room. Two, they've had that World Cup experience, and it's basically having a crack for 18 months and then maybe doing. I just would feel gutted for if we go for a total new one. Like, I just don't think you can just turf them out again after 2 years.
Yeah.
Well, presume that they don't win.
Yeah,
but maybe it's a 4-year contract that you give them and say, okay, 2 now and 2 after.
The other question I have is, how important is Tony Brown in this? Okay,
Yeah.
so in the Dave Rennie, Jamie Joseph, I think the assistants are a bigger part of this picture than the figurehead.
Yep.
Yeah.
Correct.
So because as we've seen, you need to cover your weaknesses. Obviously, when Rennie won, he had Coventry, Strawbridge. I think Wayne Smith was in and around helping.
Yeah. You know what stands out to me about that, and I'll throw this at you, Bryn. When they selected Razor, they then went and selected, apart from Jason Ryan, a bunch of head coaches along to go with them, whether that's Leon McDonald or Jason Holland, those guys. Do you want a bunch of guys who are alphas, who run teams, to come and work under a guy? Or do you actually want assistant coaches who are committed to being an assistant coach, not being a head coach, to work with your head coach at international level?
100%.
If I was a coach and you're thinking being a part of the All Blacks squad and being a coach is the pinnacle, right? So whether you're a head coach or assistant coach or whatever, depending if you've been a previous head coach, you put that all aside to be able to try and be a coach of the All Black or of the All Blacks. But sometimes when you maybe get into that environment, possibly Leon McDonald for an example, when you're running a side, like the Blues for 4 years that he did there, was able to have some success. And he was the person that was able to, I guess, run the program. And this isn't to say that this happened or whatever, but, as a head coach, it might be in your thinking to be able to challenge or not think that this is going in the right direction. Do I really want to be here if I can't able to run my own program? So that's a great question.
I think the answer is pretty clear. Look who lost the job, the head coach. So it needs to be your cutter because everything's on the line for you. There's still opportunity that those assistant coaches are still a part of this somehow, so if you don't have the autonomy, and I also think sometimes, Bryn, in teams, you need to, there'll be a game plan decision that, but then you actually need someone to say, okay, no, this is what we're doing. So I think you do need you need to know who the boss is.
It's pretty major having those tiers, and a guy like Wayne Smith, who's been the boss but has actually committed to being an assistant, is gold in that way.
Unbelievable.
Isn't it? Because you remove the ego and you just bring the talent.
100%. I think with both Dave Rennie and Jamie Joseph, we can win a World Cup. So in terms of people that are lining up for the job, pretty good. It's now just putting the support class and seeing which one of them, I suppose, impresses the panel enough. Because you've got to understand, the panel will know what's been said, so they'll know what gaps need to be sorted out. So within that interview, I'm assuming they'll get a sense of who's going to fit. I think it will become quite obvious because they're two different people. That's where that will become a lot clearer for them. But I do think they need to know who the supporting acts are.
And in the past, what's happened is that people have brought in their supporting acts, and I think Pat Lamb was talking about this the other day. People have brought in the supporting act with them as part of a package deal. It feels like a far better way of going about it is to hire your head coach and then create the supporting acts around them. It's like we've shot ourselves in the foot before by by creating these teams that are going for it and then wiping other options out.
You know, it's quite funny. You think about when we, went to the transition of when Razor went to head coach from Fozzie. It was pretty clear on who was going to be the coach, and from all accounts, everybody was all happy with that. So I think for me, just this time, it's just like, well, I actually just can't tell you. I don't know who the assistant coaches are going to be and what that's going to look like, for whether it's a Jamie Joseph or a Dave Rennie. So that process is going to be really important. And at the same time, whether the coach, hopefully, you'd like to think that through that process, they're going to get the coaches right. But there's enough quality of the players and the leadership group and the team that's there for us to still win a World Cup anyway. You know what I mean? So at the same time, the players will take accountability and around, yep, cool, this is what we've decided. So, they've got a priority and an expectation on themselves, right? It's because they wanted some change. So the players as well, depending on whoever they do get as coach, they've got an expectation as well.
It wasn't all just the players. Like, I think that's the context everyone's taken in, but I think the review went a lot wider than that, than just the players. I think I don't think it's as simple as saying this has happened because of the players.
They play a big role, but
yeah, they do. But it's unfair
management and assistant coaches and all sorts of other things involved,
to just say,
yeah,
it's them.
Yeah.
Yes, they were a part of it.
That's it.
But so were other management as well, So, and I'm sure other people. I suppose there's consultants and all sorts that go into the. So it creates the wider piece for David Kirk and the board to make a decision.